Hello everyone, this is Carolyn, your retired happy friend from Mississippi. Welcome back to my channel, Retired Life. This is a journey, no doubt, and I am so humbled and so appreciative and just so overwhelmed by all of the responses I have gotten, all the comments I've gotten. All of them have been positive. I haven't had any negative comments. All of you have been very complimentary of everything I have posted so far and of Maisie, and many, many requests for the bread. So the bread is rising as we speak. I started it this morning, and I will be putting the video of how I made the potato rolls and the potato bread along with the recipe at the end of this. But first of all, I just want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for all your responses, and it means the world to me. This is a new venture. It's one I started right about the middle or the end of December, so I'm only about a month into this journey on YouTube and sharing, and my purpose, or what I wanted to accomplish, was to establish a community of people who are in a like situation and going along this journey of retirement with all its challenges. And I have found that everything changes, nothing stays the same very long. This weekend I went over to Alabama, and my thankful for today is thankful for safe travels. I don't get on the interstate, and I don't travel by myself anymore. I have Meniere's, which is a vertigo problem, and then I have another problem with my vision and my eyesight since I had my cataract surgery. So that's another story that we'll go into later. But my thankful for today is thankful for travels to Alabama, getting me back home, and now I have a lot to consider, a lot to think about a change possible in the future. I do have a mortgage, as I have shared with you before. I am in a senior condo community, and our homeowner dues have just gone up, where it is going to stretch my retirement budget more than I feel comfortable with, and I just feel like I need to make some changes at this point. So if any of you have moved from a house or a condo or have made a change into an apartment, I have lived in an apartment, but it's been a long time. But this will be close to family, close to a daughter and granddaughter, and they are encouraging me to move over to be close to them. So there are pros and cons both ways. And I would like to hear from any of you who have been along that journey in your retired life. I'll be 80 this weekend, so I am turning a milestone. It is going to be a challenge, a huge decision. So please let me know in the comments any feelings you have, or if you have had to make this decision, whether it worked well or didn't work well, whether you wish you had, glad you did, wish you hadn't, whatever. So my good word for today is treat others the way you want to be treated. Wouldn't it be a wonderful world if we all treated each other the way we want to be treated ourselves? So that's the good word for today. And it takes work sometimes. Sometimes there are challenging situations where it's hard to think of how I would want to be treated and then treat others the way I would like. So it is a challenge, part of this journey. And now I'm going to get on with, I'm going to post the roll recipe, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you make it. It's easy. The first time you make it, it may be a little bit challenging just working through the process, but the end results is so worth it. And I didn't really add up the cost of it because I don't really know. I can't really break it down, but I do know it's a whole lot less than it is buying the already made. Plus, I like knowing where my bread was made, who made it, what's in it. And I know that it's not loaded down with preservatives and chemicals and salt, and I do have to limit my salt intake. So that's a very, very, very big reason that I do so much of my home cooking, so I can control the amount of salt I eat. So happy cooking, happy baking, and please let me know after you try the bread recipe. I've had so many requests for it. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. I'm getting ready to make the potato rolls, so these are the ingredients I have out. We have 2 eggs, a teaspoon of salt, 2 potatoes I'm going to peel, boil, mash. There's 1/3 cup sugar, 6 tablespoons butter, and the all-purpose flour. Now the recipe calls for 4 cups of flour, so you'll see in it I'm going to use 1 cup of whole wheat flour, and then I put 1 cup of self-rising flour, so I do deviate from the original recipe a little bit. And I have 1.5 packs of active dry yeast. So first I'm going to peel, boil the potatoes, mash them with the immersion blender, and add the butter to the hot potatoes and let it melt. These are 2 russet potatoes, and I've been boiling them for right at 15 minutes. So I've been stirring and mashing them while they've been boiling, and most of the water is out of them. They're still warm, so I'm going to add the 6 tablespoons of butter to the already cooked russet potatoes, and then blend the potatoes and the butter up with my immersion blender. The butter is melted in the hot potatoes, and I'm just mixing that up, trying to get all of the potatoes mixed up. I have made it where I didn't get all the potatoes mixed up, and when I was kneading the flour, I just mashed the little pieces. The potatoes are all mashed and they're soft. The butter is dissolved in the potatoes. And I really do think the russet potatoes work better for this recipe. I usually buy the Yukon Gold potatoes if I'm just baking them or going to boil them. So this is 1.5 packs of active dry yeast. I'm putting in 3/4 cup just warm water, warm to touch. You don't want it boiling or it will kill the yeast. So we're going to stir that and let the yeast start dissolving while we get started on mixing the bread. So there's the yeast. We're going to put it down and just let it all dissolve. Now when I have my mixer out, I put my dough hook on, and in my mixing bowl I'm going to put the 2 eggs. And the eggs need to be at room temperature, so go ahead and set them out early. And one trick I have found, if I don't have time to let them get to room temperature, I set them in a little bowl of just kind of room temperature water, lukewarm water, and that will warm them up. So I have 2 teaspoons salt. And I'm sorry, y'all, I'm not using a measuring spoon. I'm just eyeballing it, and we're going to mix that. Now we're going to add the mashed potatoes and the butter. Get all those good potatoes in there. And the yeast. And the yeast has dissolved. That clump that was in the bottom of the cup has dissolved. So we're going to add that with the eggs. So there we have the potatoes. We have the butter, the eggs, 1/3 cup sugar. And the recipe calls for 4 cups of all-purpose flour. So I'm going to use 4 cups altogether, but as I told you early on, I'm going to use 1 cup of whole wheat. If you don't want to use whole wheat flour, just use 4 cups total of flour. I'm going to use 2 cups of all-purpose, 1 cup of whole wheat, and 1 cup of self-rising. And I'll have that all written down. In the bowl now I have 1 cup whole wheat flour, 1 cup self-rising flour. Now the other 2 cups are going to be all-purpose. So that's 1 cup all-purpose. This little cover on my bowl just keeps the flour from flying all over my kitchen. And when I'm spooning my flour, I take so many shortcuts, y'all, it's not even funny. But I fluff up, that's what I call it, fluff up the flour, and then shake it off where I have an even flat cup. So that's 4 cups flour total. And I have found putting 1 cup of self-rising flour just helps it to rise a little bit better. Okay, it is all in a ball, so that doesn't take very long at all. Scrape it off of my dough hook. We're going to sprinkle a little flour on the counter, on whatever surface you're going to be rolling your bread dough out on. And do you see how nicely the bread dough just formed a ball in the mixing bowl? And there we have it. That's the hard part. The rest of it is just kneading it, letting the dough rise, and then we bake it, and we have fresh, wonderful, warm, homemade bread. And if you feel any little lumps of potatoes, which I don't this time, I think those russet potatoes really did a good job getting all soft. But if you do feel any little lumps of potatoes, all you have to do is just kind of mash them up as you're kneading your dough. And I usually knead it for about 5-10 minutes. And I don't think I need to add any more flour. This came out really, really good. I don't know how you are, but my home cooking, everything I make comes out different every time I make it, but it's nice when it always comes out the same. I'm going to put a little bit more flour so it won't stick to my counter. And that's all. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in the bottom of the mixing bowl that I mixed it up in. This is what I always let it rise in, is my metal mixing bowl. So we have our nice ball of bread dough. I'm going to put it in there, put it downside, and then turn it up so the top of the dough will be oiled. Isn't that beautiful? That is going to make a wonderful batch of bread. And I usually make 1 loaf, and then I get 24 buns out of this recipe. So I'm going to move the bread over to the back of my stove, cover it with a damp cloth, and turn my oven on just on a real low temperature, just to provide a little bit of heat. So I'm going to put this on, cover it up, and let it sit and rise for 2 hours. So the bowl of dough, bread dough, is on the back of my stove. This is the burner that gets the heat from the oven. The heat rises from the oven. So I have my oven turned on, well, it's still heating up. It's on 100 now, but I turned it to 180. So that will warm on up a little bit. So I'm going to cover it with the dish towel. And what the covering does with the dish towel, it just keeps the heat inside the bowl and helps the yeast and the bread to rise a little bit easier. And it keeps it from drying out. So there we go. That is the hardest part of it, is cooking the potatoes, and the most time consuming, getting the potatoes done and then putting it all together. And now it's going to rise for 2 hours while I go about my daily chores, and we will come back in 2 hours and check on our bread dough. Maisie is waiting patiently while I bake the bread and do all my errands while the bread dough is rising. Aren't you, Maisie? Huh? Yeah, it's a good girl. The bread dough has been rising for 2 hours now, maybe a little bit more, 2.5 hours. I had to go do something. So I just uncovered it, and this is what we have. So it has risen almost all the way up to the top of the bowl. So now we're going to take our bread dough out of the bowl, put it on the counter. Now I have a loaf pan, and I'm oiling the loaf pan with just regular vegetable oil. So I'm going to make 1 loaf, and then I'm going to make the rest of it in rolls. So this is parchment paper on my cookie sheet, and I've learned how to make my parchment paper, excuse the noise, to make it lay down because it's all curled up. So I scrunch it up and then lay it out, and it will lay flat for me. So So I'm going to take the dough now. I put a little bit more flour down on my counter so the dough wouldn't stick to the counter. I'm going to roll it a little bit more, knead it, and I think I need a little bit more flour. It's a little bit sticky. So this batch is doing really, really well. I think it knew it was being filmed and it's having its picture taken, so it's doing really well for us. Okay. So there we go. I'm going to take a big piece of it off the end. And this is going to be my loaf. I think I'll put a little bit more in there. I didn't get quite enough, so I'm going to put a little bit more. Okay. So there we go. And that will be fine when it bakes. It may separate in there, but that's okay too. No problem. Okay, so there's my loaf. And that's going to rise. We're going to set it back on the back of the burner and let it rise again before it bakes. So now we're going to make the rolls. Some of them I make a little bit bigger because I really do use these for my hamburger buns, sandwich buns, if I'm making sloppy joes or any kind of sandwiches. I use my bread dough. When you think about, I haven't really added up how much it cost me to make my bread, but when you consider I was buying a loaf of bread at Kroger for 99 cents a loaf, the Kroger bread, not very long ago. Then it went up to $1.19, then it went up to $1.99, and bread has just gotten so expensive. And I was already making my bread before that, but when that happened, that really made me consider just making my bread completely. This way I know it has no preservatives, has nothing in it to make it stay fresh on the shelf longer. And I showed you at the beginning when I make it, and I'm going to put it on in the comments how I made it. I put 1 cup of whole wheat flour. It calls for 4 cups total of flour. Now, if you don't want to use whole wheat flour, just use 3 cups all-purpose, 1 cup self-rising, and there you've got your 4 cups of flour. But I already had the whole wheat flour on hand in my pantry, and if I use all whole wheat flour, it doesn't really rise well. It's a little bit heavy, so I like using just 1 cup of the whole wheat flour and the rest of it regular. And also, I don't know if you noticed on the bag or not, but on the all-purpose flour, I got the unbleached all-purpose flour. That way it's more natural and it doesn't have the bleaching ingredients, whatever they use to bleach it. So, all of you know who are watching at home, when you do things at home, you don't always do it the same way every time you make it. So, it depends on how your day's going, what else you have going on, and kind of how you feel that day. All of you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. We're not professional bakers, so there you go. Okay, so that's all my rolls. I'm going to take a little bit of flour and sprinkle on the top, and that's kind of just traditional for potato rolls, that they have a little bit of flour sprinkled on the top. Now, if you want to, when you're making yours, it's your rolls and your bread. So if you want to, put some butter on top of it or some oil. And sometimes you can use egg wash. I have had recipes that use an egg wash. And I whip up an egg with a little bit of water and then take a pastry brush and brush it over the top. So if you want to do that, you can do that. And when the loaf of bread comes out, if you prefer, you can take a pastry brush and brush butter over the top of it. So when it's in your house and in your kitchen and your recipe and your bread, you can make it the way you want it to be. That's another one of the benefits of making our own. Okay, now all of the rolls, so I've got 3, 6, 9, 12. I got 14 rolls, same thing I did in the last video. So I have 14 rolls, 1 loaf of bread. I'm going to set this on the back of the stove and let it sit for about maybe an hour and a half, 2 more hours, and then we'll come back and bake it. It will bake at 350 for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'll let you know when we come back, until they are light brown on top. So these are going to make some good rolls for dinner tonight. The rolls and bread have been sitting on the back of the stove, rising for about 2 hours now, and they are ready to go in the oven. So I'm preheating the oven. It's going to heat to 350, and then I'm going to put the rolls in and put the bread in, and I'll show you the finished product when they come out of the oven. Oh, they're going to be so good. The rolls and bread are out of the oven now. And when you take your rolls out of the oven, the parchment paper will just slide right off of the cookie sheet. So slide it off immediately so that the bottom of the buns won't sweat and get wet and soggy. So I've turned them over so the bottom could get dry. But these rolls turned out beautifully. They were puffy and fluffy and just really, really, really good rolls. I'm just really pleased with them. The other thing I forgot to mention is how good baking bread makes your house smell. So for a good smell in the wintertime, bake bread, and it also heats up your house to have the oven on. So this is the loaf of bread. I'm getting ready to turn it out on a paper towel and get it out of the pan so it won't get soggy. So there we go. I had to use both hands to get the bread out of the pan, but the bottom of it is brown and crusty, and I'm going to let it stay on the side for just a few minutes so the moisture can escape from the inside and it won't be soggy, and then I'll turn it over. But I'll put the loaf of bread in a gallon size plastic bag, and if I don't use it right away, I'll go ahead and put it in the freezer. And also the rolls or the buns, I put them in a gallon plastic bag, seal it up with a zip tie, and then put them in the freezer. Take them out one at a time, slice it, put it in my little toaster oven, and toast it and butter it, and it comes out just like it's been fresh baked. So I hope you enjoy this recipe, and I hope everything was clear while I was putting it together. And if you have any questions, post them in the comments, and I'm going to put the exact ingredients that I used in the comments, because I did change the original recipe a little bit by using 1 cup of whole wheat flour. But anyway, I have another recipe on baked bread, yeast bread, that does not use potatoes, and I was using it until I found this recipe, and it's just as good. So next time I'll post that bread recipe. Have fun, enjoy your baking, and I will see you later. Bye-bye. So the bread is made. I have it all bagged. I might have bagged the loaf a little bit soon because it has some condensation on the bag. But that's the loaf bread. All the buns are in their bag. And I forgot to mention the loaf bread does not really make good sandwiches like your grocery store commercially produced loaf bread. So for sandwiches, I use a bun, and this is my dinner tonight. I have a scrambled egg and provolone cheese. I could have added a bacon in it, but I didn't want the extra calories and cholesterol and whatever with the bacon. So that's going to do me just fine. I'll put a fresh apple with it, just a sliced fresh apple, and that will be my dinner tonight. So that's my suggestion. Use the buns, and of course all you cooks know that you can make these buns any size you want them. I make mine a little bit bigger, so they will be big enough for a sandwich. But you can make them all the way from bite size for tea sandwiches, ham and cheese sandwiches, hamburgers, sloppy joes, ham, cheese, provolone, lettuce, tomato, whatever you want to use it for. They're fantastic. Let me know your thoughts and how yours turn out. Good night, everyone. It's the end of the day. We're in for our walk, and Maisie's ready for bed. She's saying, "It's been a great day today. Good night, everyone."